Good afternoon, everybody. It is Tuesday, January 10th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. and I'll call to order the Freetown Board of Selectmen meeting. This meeting will be recorded and will be available on our town YouTube page. I will start off with agenda item 1, and this is the meeting minutes from 1/3/2023. So I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion made.
Second it, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda item 2 is the annual town meeting and special town meeting date, time, and place. I think the suggested date is June 5th, I want to say.
Correct.
At the Apponequet Regional High School. No, sorry.
No, high school.
It is high school, okay. It is. The second choice would be the Lakeville. Do we have any conflicts with that location? We reached out to them?
It was confirmed today, it's all set.
Okay, great. And it'll be at 7 p.m. is the suggested time. Any comments, concerns on that?
No.
Nothing big going on in the world that would diminish turnout on the day before my dad's birthday. That's the one thing I can think of.
So that's big. I'm not
Huge.
sure.
All right, I have no issues with that date.
No, me either. No. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to have the annual town meeting and special town meeting at 7 p.m. on Monday, June 5th, 2023 at the Apponequet Regional High School Auditorium at 100 Holland Road, Lakeville, Mass.
Motion made.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. All right, so now we have the timeline here. I guess I'll just read through the timeline real quickly. So on 1/10/2023, we have today, the timeline Board of Selectmen meeting. We're doing that, so good start. On 2/13 will be the physical posting of the town hall, police, fire, juniors convenience store, and libraries. On 2/13/2023, we'll have Facebook posting and website posting. Posting will state articles submitted by citizens require 100 signatures for a special town meeting and 10 annual town meeting, and 10 for the annual town meeting from Freetown voters to be added to the warrant. On 2/21/2023, we'll have a BOS agenda to open for submissions of warrant. That meeting will be held, on the warrant, which is 2/22/2023 warrant, and that'll be it. Sorry, hold on, let me make sure I'm reading this correctly.
We'll have a meeting on the 21st, and then the warrant will be open the 22nd.
At 8 a.m. on the 2nd. All right, on the 22nd. It'll be open until 3/31/2023 at 11 a.m. All right. Then on 4/3/2023, warrants on the Board of Selectmen agenda to be approved and closed warrant for submission and be sent to Town Council. On the 18th, 4/18, warrant on the Board of Selectmen agenda for discussion to vote to open, approve, finalize, and close the warrant. And then on 4/19, send the final version of the warrant to Finance Committee. Warrants given to the Town Constable for posting on 5/17/2023, and warrants get posted publicly no later than 5/22/2023. Everyone's okay with that timeline?
Yeah.
I don't see any issues. All right, great. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the annual town meeting and special town meeting timeline.
Motion made.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, I'm gonna do the next 2 out of order, so the chief doesn't have to sit here all day. So agenda item 5 is the fire station additions and renovations. And Deb, you wanna kind of kick
Yeah, I
this
can start
conversation off?
that. I mean, we've been talking for some time now that the fire station needed an addition to accommodate both female and male firefighters. There's only one single bunk room for both at this current time, and that with the addition of more firefighters that may be male or female, we are going to need more bunk room space. So there's sort of an imminent need to get more bunk room space. The selectmen approved a feasibility study to be done, which we did over the last, 9 months. We worked with the fire department, members of the building committee, the building commissioner. They have since, left posts, but we did work with them along the way. We had different scenarios drawn, 6 different scenarios, I believe, with different costs, and with the collaboration of everybody involved. The final scheme, which I think is your paper might be scheme 6, shows a new added bay with the bunk rooms on the 2nd floor, which there were some critical needs that needed to be met with the fire station, and we together thought this was the best schematic to meet the most critical needs of the fire station. And at this point, this is just a feasibility study, conceptual drawings. We're at a position where the next step is to hire the OPM because the cost would be more than $1.5 million. So state law mandates that we hire an OPM. So the next step is to hire an OPM who will then hire an architect who will draw the actual plans and get in further depth of what we can do. But at this point, we need the selectmen to say this is the way they would like to move forward. I will tell you that the selectmen voted, the ARPA funds to use $750,000, which will allow us to move forward funding-wise to hire the OPM. With the cost being roughly $3 million, we will be going to town meeting and asking for the appropriation for the remainder of the money to build the addition. We have a majority of that money in free cash. So there may be some funding that has to come out of stabilization. There will be no tax impact at this point to the residents. I don't know if there's anything else I can.
What did you mention the total cost? I see here it says 2.95 million.
So that is the total projected cost, but that's the construction cost. So I've got to add the OPM, which is 10%. That being said, I think the chief and I have discussed, I would like to shave the cost down just a little bit more, but we felt like at this point, this was close enough to move to the next level. So there will be an architect involved because there are things that chief would like to tweak too. I mean, this is not the final plan.
Yeah,
this is sort of just enough to get to the next
Yep.
step. At least we spent quite some time doing this plan to get to this point, and felt like in order to just keep moving forward. I mean, another piece of this is we do have some grant money.
Yeah.
We have $50,000 in grant money that needs to be spent on an engineer by the end of the year.
And just so I understand, like conceptually here, so we're going to go, if you're looking at the building to the right of it, that's where the addition will go, and then it'll be additional bays underneath, and then bunks, and then, quarters upstairs.
There'll be a 2-story addition on the Central Park end of the building.
Yep.
And then so basically the whole addition can happen without interrupting our day-to-day operations.
That makes a lot of sense.
What's existing.
Yeah.
Once it's done, we're gonna, and I would expect it to be very minor, we're gonna reconfigure some of the existing space, office space and record storage and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
You were reading my mind, because I was gonna ask if it was gonna affect you, and if so, how much?
Well, that was part of what I liked about this
Right.
final scenario was that we're able to still function. We don't need to move out in the office trailers.
Yeah, that'll be a pain. And then there's plenty of room on that side of the building for us to expand that out.
Yeah, we did.
It's 31 acres. We own all the way to Memorial.
Yeah, so I figured that. Yeah, that makes sense.
And the septic is on the left, all the way on the left side, looking at it. We may need to upgrade the septic. I have to do a little more homework with that. But again, I think the OPM and the architect will do that. But this addition does meet the 3 identified critical needs of the fire department currently, which is the bunks, and the bunk room, a new bay, and then a day room office space. So Because there was many more needs, I just want to identify that we had, but we had, you know, and we had to compromise down to this because the original plan was over $5 million, I think, so.
Now, this might be a bit of a silly question, but just the experiences you had talking about the different renovations to the COA, I know as soon as you put any kind of money into a building, if it's over a threshold, that triggers ADA compliance. And since this is a town-owned building, has that cost been kind of taken into consideration if there's anything that's not ADA compliant now?
So this is a little bit different, right? Because
Yeah.
this is not a public building.
It's not a public, yes, making sure that
So, and the ADA, like the bunk rooms can be on the second floor because in order to be a firefighter,
you have to have those, yeah.
You have to meet some
Well,
standards.
I mean, a lot of times the rules don't necessarily make sense, so that's why I'd rather ask.
I will tell you what it does trigger was that it will be over 7,500 square feet. It will trigger the sprinkler system, which can be expensive.
Yeah.
But none of us seem to have an issue with that. I mean, obviously the fire station should maybe have.
Yeah, that would be pretty
sprinkler
embarrassing if a fire station burns down.
So, there was a scenario that was proposed that didn't trigger that, but it didn't really meet any of the needs, and we all felt like that at the end of the day, we would just kind of be throwing money down and not really getting what the fire department needs at this current stage, let alone for future.
Yeah, and will like really need to be like additional HVAC systems and things of that nature kind of upgraded to facilitate the bigger building, I'm assuming?
Yeah, and we'll get, like I said, into the details of that as
Yeah.
we move forward. I mean, this is still a long process. Just now, like I said, there's an RFP that will go out, like they did for the police station, to hire an OPM. The OPM then sort of, the OPM works for the town,
Mhm.
is paid for by the town, and they have oversight. They will then work with you to get the architects to design the actual building. They're the ones that are sort of the GC of the project. They're on site. They will be monitoring the construction, monitoring the costs, and they will be bringing things back to the subcommittee that's sort of within the fire station that say, hey, okay, what are we gonna do with this? And, we'll keep monitoring it on that basis and report back to the selectmen.
Right, that makes a lot of sense to me. Any questions?
No, I don't have a question to answer.
So I think scheme 6 seems to be the way to go. So, sure, for this vote, should I mention, to go forward with scheme 6? Does that make sense?
Right, I think that's our sort of our, again, it's our conceptual design to
Yeah,
give us all a baseline to start with.
all right.
That will definitely be tweaked and changed, and hopefully, like I said, I'm hopeful I can still shave some money off of that.
All right, great. Okay, so with that, I'll entertain a motion to move forward with scheme 6 provided by Compass Group Architecture for the fire station addition and renovations.
I'll make the motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and now we have, appreciate your time, Chief.
Thank you.
Now we have the South Main Street Bridge discussion. I looked through some of those pictures.
I've never seen the bridge from the bottom side, so it's interesting. There's a lot of missing brick. A lot of
Yeah.
missing brick.
I mean, this discussion is basically just to update everybody because I found this in the files and thought, oh. There's some concerns with that, and this is the South Main Street Bridge right across from Grampy's there, that we had done work on 3 or 4 years ago. I can't remember. I just remember seeing the guy floating on his little house under there doing some work. So
Yeah.
the crux of this is that there's a crack in the bridge. And they did that work a few years ago to shore it up, to make sure it didn't shift and repair it. However, there's concerns and that those repairs are not gonna last forever and that we really need to do an overhaul of that bridge. So finding this information, I called the engineer, I met with the engineer, I met with Chuck Macumber from the highway. We had a meeting, and what the engineer said is it's stable right now and it has been stable, the crack, but once the crack begins to move, it's gonna move quickly. So being my nature is always the planner, I thought, oh, we need to get this on the radar. I need you to all be up to speed of where we're at. We're waiting for the Mass DOT to come out with a new inspection, which was probably done in October of '22, but they haven't gotten us the report yet.
Okay.
So as soon as that comes out, we'll know if that's moving or stable. So this is just sort of informational that it's coming, that we need to get a study done, some engineering done to determine how we repair it. Do we overlay it like we did the other bridge in front of the fire station on Elm Street? Or do we replace the whole entire thing, which is going to be extremely difficult? What is it going to cost, and how are we going to fund it? So these are the things that I'm beginning to do. I've spoken with Senator Rodrick about funding the study. He's looking into things to see if he can get me any funding. Chuck said if all else fails, he'll use Chapter 90 money, because we need to start the process so that we're ready if in fact the report comes and says this is happening, and we need to have discussions about how that happens. We tentatively talked about possibly doing it next summer, the summer of 2024, because you want to do it when the school buses aren't running and things like that, because it will definitely impede traffic on Route 79.
Yeah.
So I just this is sort of like, I just want to put this on your radar. I want to tell you that I'm starting to work on getting, the information to keep it moving.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and it makes me think of if we ever are successful in getting the sewer down Main Street, right, that's going to be, how do you get around that area, that bridge, right? That's a key spot, which that's another thing, I don't know what makes sense in order of operations.
Right.
Or if that bridge has to.
We could always, if we had to, the consensus seems to be that we're going to do an overlay on that bridge. But doing an overlay of that bridge raises the height, so then we've got the issue when we're going to be in front of Grampy's, we're going to be up higher.
Yeah.
And I don't know the logistics of that, but that's sort of the consensus. To try to meet Mass DOT specifications with that bridge would have to be widened considerably, and we have no place to widen.
Yeah, we don't own property on, it's all private property around.
Right, and it's on a corner, so
Yeah.
I don't want to say that that's the result, but most likely that's going to be, and I will tell you the projected cost is somewhere around $1.8 million to do that. So just so you know, as budgets season evolves, I may be looking to try to put some of that money away now, so that we can pay for it over a couple of years.
Yeah.
Because if we don't meet Mass DOT specs, there's no state funding for it. We will have to pay for it as a town.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't see how we widen that thing at all, right?
Yeah.
And it's a historic bridge, right? So we're gonna do our best to try and keep that archway intact, like the other one. So yeah.
So we'll
and then part of it,
continue
we
to.
also, because Victoria came in and gave us that thing, one of the big questions or concerns rather was the four-way intersection, right? Doing something with the four-way intersection, and what happens with that, if that will play into that bridge at all,
Yeah.
right? So it's all kind of puzzled, so, yeah.
Well, yeah. I appreciate the heads up on this. I think,
Yeah, thank you.
It's just to put it on your radar, because I think it was probably on the radar, and then the repairs got done, and it's like, oh, that's great, but then you blink your eyes and it's been 5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I think it's probably been about that. I'm like, let's get this back on the radar so that we don't want to have to be reacting in an emergency capacity,
I understand, yeah.
if we can help it. So
All right.
that's it. It's just to let you know that's what's going on.
Thank you.
All right, appreciate it. Okay, agenda item 6 is whether or not to accept a donation from the Tuesday Club to the Council on Aging in the amount of $100. I did see a note here, there has to be a spending plan. Is that?
The Council on Aging Director called today and said that it is to help a needy family, so that is the spending plan.
That's good enough for me. All right, any discussion on this? Okay, well, thank you to the Tuesday Club, by the way. And I'll entertain a motion to accept the donation from the Tuesday Club to the Council on Aging in the amount of $100.
A motion made?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving on, we have $350,000 of Bristol County ARPA funds to purchase updated public safety radio equipment. Do I want to speak to this a little bit?
Sure. So, we have the new communication system for the radios for the police and fire. We are currently waiting for the FCC channel for the fire frequency to be approved. We've located one, now we're waiting for them to approve that frequency, and then the radios can be programmed, the equipment for the towers can be purchased. So we have this funding that we got through town meeting, but one of the uses that I think Bristol County opera funding will allow for broadband. They're very limited in what they allow you to use the funding for, and we got $1.5 million. We used approximately $400,000 for water meters and another $50,000 for generators. So we still have $1 million in opera funding. We have $200,000 that we use for sewer.
Mhm.
So we still have quite a bit of opera money available, but it can only be used for water, sewer, broadband, and sort of emergency protocols, PPEs.
And it has to, it has to be declared what we're gonna use for it by,
December of '24,
okay,
and it has to be spent by December of '26.
all right,
So we have time.
yep,
So my thought was that we use this money, if they approve the application, for the radios. And then the money that we allocated at town meeting, it will still be in there in an article, and we can always repurpose that to another use.
Yeah.
You'd have to go to town meeting and get a vote, but that we could repurpose that money to either the new fire station or whatever else we may need it for.
and do we think that the radios do fall under the broadband kind of umbrella?
I say that, and the reason why I didn't do this originally was I was thinking broadband, like, cables, fiber,
Yeah.
which, we've talked possibly doing fiber as well. But another town has applied and got that. So, I watch constantly what other town is spending their ARPA funding on, and another town did get radios. So that's why I'm thinking that we can do that.
All right,
If
well,
not, the project's gonna move forward regardless, because we do have funding.
yeah, that makes sense to me.
Why not use that, yeah.
All right, any questions on that?
No.
That makes sense to me. I mean, we definitely need that. So I'll entertain a motion to use the $250,000 of Bristol County ARPA funds to purchase updated public safety radio equipment.
Motion made.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, now kick it over to town clerk for. By the way, is 8 minutes enough time? you
Yes,
think?
will be plenty of time.
Okay.
I'll talk
perfect.
fast.
All right, great.
Okay, good evening. My name is Cheryl Estrella. For the viewers at home who don't know who I am the Freetown Town Clerk. I want to thank the Board of Selectmen for letting me come on tonight and just do a little bit of public service announcements. Most viewers probably don't know that the Town Clerk's department encompasses 3 different departments: Town Clerk, Board of Registrars, and Elections. So upon taking office back in elected office in April of 2021, some of my major goals were to get information out into the voters' hands and out into the residents' hands. We've been more frequent on posting through the town's Facebook page, getting our webpage up to date and accurate, as well as utilizing the signs in town and the reverse 911 or one call system out to residents. Along with that, we've newly implemented with last year's elections some tutorials and some videos. Tonight I'm here to discuss preparations for the annual town election in hopes that we could get more community involvement, get folks who haven't thought about running for election before, or what it entailed, or what nomination papers are available and things of that nature. And I figured this would be a good atmosphere in which to do that and kind of get residents informed. So with that being said, I'd like to, with the assistance of my Assistant Town Clerk Tim McIntosh, we've got a slideshow presentation for you. You've actually had hard copies too, I believe, in your packets. But as you are well aware, we called for the Board of Selectmen called for the annual town election last month. The annual local town election is going to be held on Monday, April 3rd, 2023. It will be at the Freetown Elementary School. I will make a note that I will be coming back to the board and back to the viewers that there will be a change with recent events in regards to entering the polling location, and we're going to have some different traffic flow. So again, I'll be coming in front of you folks in order to help prepare and get the news out to town voters. So polls will be open from 12 p.m. noon until 8 p.m. in the evening. Currently, the list of available positions are Board of Selectmen and Personnel Board for a 3-year term. Currently, that is held by Trevor Matthews. We have 3 Board of Health positions that were separated from the Board of Selectmen's position at the last annual town meeting. So we have 3 positions there, a 1-year, a 2-year, and a 3-year term. We have a 3-year term for Board of Assessors, currently held by Jeffrey Fields. The Cemetery Commission, a 3-year term held by currently by Michael McHugh. We have 2 Finance Committee positions available, both for 3-year terms, currently held by Bob Alderson and Gary Martin. Gary Martin has notified the Elections Department that he is not seeking re-election, so that will be a vacancy there. We have the 2 positions on the Housing Authority, a 5-year held currently by Brian Miller, and a 4-year unexpired term, which is currently vacant. 2 Library Trustees positions for 3 years, currently held by Christine Piper and Paul Sadek. 1 Planning Board term, 5-year term, excuse me, that's currently held by Bob Jose. A 1 position for the Water and Sewer Commission for a 3-year term, currently held by Kevin Damaris. And then Regional School District Committee. So we have 2 positions, they're both 3-year terms, currently held by Jen Bloom and Robert Clark. I will just like to make note, during the annual town election, we will be able to vote for all positions for Regional School Committee. It's just for pulling nomination papers. We can't, obviously Lakeville residents would not be able to pull nomination papers in Lakeville, but when it comes time for the election, they will be able to vote on all positions. And currently Lakeville has 1 position that's going to be available. Moving on, who is eligible to obtain nomination papers? Any currently registered voter in the town of Freetown is eligible to pull papers. So we just want to make sure that you are currently a registered voter, that all of your census information is up to date. So anyone age 18 or over, come on down. It's a pretty simple process. You come on in, you fill out a statement of candidacy form, and we get you your nomination papers. Now, with all the positions, with the exception of Regional School Committee, it does require 40 certifiable signatures of town voters, of town residents. So School Committee does require 50. And then key dates to remember. So nomination papers were available starting last week, January 3rd. And the last date and hour to obtain those nomination papers is going to be Thursday, February 9th, and the office is open until 5 p.m. that evening. So that's the last day that you can obtain the forms. And then the last day to submit or return those forms back to the Board of Registrars via the Office of the Town Clerk is going to be the day before Valentine's Day. That's Monday, February 13th at 5 p.m. With the new Votes Act, which I'll get into a little bit later on tonight, the voter registration deadlines have changed. So some people were used to the 20-day cutoff. It's now going to be the 10-day cutoff, and the last day for residents who are not currently registered voters in Freetown. So whether they have never registered in Freetown before, moved from a different community, have not registered voters in Freetown, the last day to register will be Friday, March 24th at 5 p.m. They can vote either in person at the town clerk's office, Board of Registrars, or they can actually do it online themselves. And if they wish to do that, just go to voteinma.com and register to vote that way. Again, just to reiterate, the annual local town election is going to be Monday, April 3rd, polls open 12 to 8. All precincts 1, 2, and 3, all vote at the same polling location. That is Freetown Elementary School at 43 Bullock Road. We ask that you use the Memorial Drive entrance, and there will be more information to come in regards to new traffic pattern and flow. And if there's any questions, folks can reach out to us over at Town Hall, Extension 2, and you get right to the town clerk's office. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
I had mind of its own this whole time, so I'm glad you guys could see it. It was doing whatever it wanted.
All right, that was perfect timing. We have about 1 minute, and then we'll open up the public hearing.
You do the personnel section?
Personnel.
Yeah, I guess I have a minute to do it, yeah. So I'll do personnel. So, well, is the swearing going to take more than a minute?
Nope.
Okay, so first, we'll acknowledge the resignation of Bob Jose from the Building Committee effective 1/3/2023. Just want to thank Bob for all of his hard work. And then agenda item 10 is swearing in of Tim McIntosh as Assistant Town Clerk effective 1/1/2023 through 6/30/2023.
Okay.
Please
sounds
take
good.
it away.
So I'm very happy to announce that Tim McIntosh, who has been with the town of Freetown for quite a many years, started in the town clerk's office back in July. He's been a great help to our department moving us forward, and I am very happy to announce that he is now the newly appointed assistant town clerk for the town of Freetown. So at this time, I'd like to swear him in.
Perfect.
Tim, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you, Timothy J. McIntosh, promise to uphold the Constitution of the United States, the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the bylaws of the town of Freetown? Do you promise to impart to your professional standards of quality and integrity so that the conduct and the affairs of that office shall be above reproach and merit public confidence in the position of assistant town clerk? Do you promise to serve with integrity, honor, loyalty, and excellence at all times? And do you promise to keep this oath today, tomorrow, and always?
I do.
And Timothy, would you repeat after me? I, and then state your name,
I, Timothy McIntosh,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform. That I will
Should have given me a
faithfully.
little cheat sheet here.
Sure. That I will faithfully and impartially
That I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform all duties
discharge and
Perform.
all duties
incumbent upon you
incumbent upon me
as assistant town clerk
as assistant town clerk
of the town of Freetown,
town of Freetown,
according to the best of my abilities and understanding,
according to the best of my abilities and understanding,
in good faith, so help you God.
good faith, so help me God.
I hereby declare you duly sworn in as assistant town clerk for the town of Freetown.
Why don't we repeat that
Congratulations.
one? Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Now you're stuck here. I almost lost you once, stuck.
So you get a fancy one with a gold seal.
Fancy.
All right, awesome. So now, just on perfect timing, I'm going to open up the public hearing. So I'm going to read the notice. Public notice, Town of Freetown, Board of Selectmen. Notice is hereby given that the Town of Freetown Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing to consider opting out of the vote by mail for municipal town elections scheduled for Monday, April 3rd, 2023. Said hearing will occur on Tuesday, January 10th, 2023 at 7 p.m. at the Police Department Community Room, 15 Memorial Drive, East Freetown, Massachusetts, 02717, during the Board of Selectmen meeting. Said hearing will begin at 7 p.m. and continue until completion, and will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 54, Section 25B, A1. And this was signed by us. So with that, the public hearing is now open. So Charlotte, you've been a big part of this meeting, so we'll kick it back to the town clerk, Charlotte.
Sure. So again, Charlotte Freetown, town clerk and chief elections official. So thank you so much for having us tonight. We're here to discuss the option to opt out of the vote by mail. For the past year, you folks have been hearing me talk about the Votes Act. Vote by mail is here to come. So let me just give you a little brief synopsis. So the Votes Act, which was signed into law by former Governor Charlie Baker last June and took effect July 2022, is an act fostering voting opportunities, trust, equity, and security. What does that mean? Basically, the act is one of the boldest election reforms introduced in Massachusetts in state history. It's building off the success of the 2020 elections when we had the little thing called COVID, and the state had to come up with different ways to make voting accessible. So some of the changes that the Votes Act made was to make vote by mail permanent, increase voter participation, expands early in-person voting. So you probably remember that from the primary and the state election back in the fall when we had in-person early voting both here at the police station and at town hall, and expand access to the ballots of eligible incarcerated citizens. And there's a slew of other things. So we're here tonight because the state and the legislature, they had good reason to try to enable more voter turnout. With that, they made vote by mail mandatory. Now, one of the provisions within the law, because vote by mail is permanent, it's here to stay, it's mandatory for all state elections and primaries. Just a quick snippet, going forward into 2024 will be a presidential election year. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at early voting and in-person early voting mandatory, March for the presidential primary, You have the local in April, which we're going to be discussing a little bit into further detail in just a moment. Then you have the state primary in September, and then you have the presidential election in November. So it's going to be a very, very heavy election year, and we've got to make some changes and accommodations to make sure that we're in compliance. So turning back to local elections, within the parameters of the law, there is a provision which gives the cities and towns the option to opt out of vote by mail based on the recommendation of the Board of Registrars. So we're going to go into a little bit of detail, but you have your cheat sheets in front of you. So let me just explain a little bit of what it is. So vote by mail in Massachusetts, a quick history. It started in the 1940s, was expanded to all registered voters in 2020 in light of COVID. The goals of the Vote Acts was to increase voter participation and make it easier for voters to vote. There's the provision that we spoke about that allows the communities to opt out, and any interested voter could apply for a vote by mail ballot. You remember that the state sent out postcards in July of last year for the primary, and then if you didn't answer those, you got a second set after the September primary to be eligible to apply to vote by mail for the November election. So we go into what is in the application. It's basically just a written request for a vote by mail ballot. With all of these pieces of paper and with all of the heightened scrutiny, let's call it, with elections to make sure that we're running safe and safe elections and everything's on the up and up. All the ballots, all the applications have to be accounted for. What does a voter know? The voter knows, well, I apply for my in-person early voting ballot, they mail it to me, I fill it out, and then I send it in. Boom, I'm done. Or they show up on election day, check in, vote, cast their ballot, out the door they go. Nice and simple. Obviously, no one sees what happens on the back end. It's with all the good intentions that the state had in order to make voting accessible, they didn't take into account the extreme amount of work that it takes on top of your daily normal duties in the elections office or the town clerk's office in order to provide in-person early voting and vote by mail. We'll go into some breakdowns of the different things and what it takes to get there. Vote by mail, again, mandatory, and it's optional for local elections. Absentee voting is separate than vote by mail. Absentee voting has been in the Constitution of Massachusetts since the 1940s. That does not change. Absentee voting is essentially vote by mail, but it's vote by mail with cause. So you have to fit into certain criteria. One of the criteria is you're not going to be in town that day. You're working, you're out of town, you're going in for surgery, you're going into rehab, you can't make it. That's an excuse for one of the most popular causes for absentee voting. That's still going to stay. That will always stay. That will never go away. That also requires an application, or you can come down to the elections office and do it once the ballots are available. You do it right over the counter. We set you up in a little booth, either in the back room or in the hallway with some trifold blinders, and you vote at your leisure and deposit your ballot that way.
I've done that before. It's very easy.
Yes, very easy. Going on vacation, very, very easy, very simple. With vote by mail, let's get into some numbers and crunch in the numbers. So right now, the town of Freetown has 9,206 total residents. We have, as of December, 6,870 registered voters. So 3/4 of our residents are registered voters. You have in front of you a brief history of what the voter turnout has been going back to 2015 at the annual local town elections. So 2015, we had 3% of the town turnout. 2016, we had 182 folks, that's 3.2%. And gradually it's increased. I'm happy to say that, 2020 was COVID year. We had some changes and some challenges there. And vote by mail was implemented on a temporary basis. We jumped to 8%. And then in 2021, the local election, we had 816 voters turn out for a total of 12%, and then last year at 868 with 12.86%. So we've been gradually increasing. Nowhere near the numbers in turnout where you would get for a presidential election or a state election, but very, very proud that people are getting more interested in their local government, because after all, your vote matters right here in town. It's right, it's where you can affect change and improve your town. So I wish more people would, and that's again with the hope of doing these public service announcements, that folks get more involved. So we talked about how vote by mail works on the voters' end. They just request the application, they fill it out, they mail it in. How it works on our end is we have to receive the application, we have to enter it into the state system, we have to, the state has implemented a track my ballot system. All that information comes from our department. So it's all manual entry. We've estimated that each application from beginning to end takes about 7 minutes to process. So
times a couple hundred.
Yes, and we'll get into the numbers of actually, I believe it was 1,400 at the November election.
Wow.
So it's very taxing and it's very costly because you have to now pay for the postage to mail out all those ballots. And then if someone says they don't get their ballot, we have to, decline that in the system, track it, send out a new ballot. You're spending essentially double the postage. We have to file and secure the ballots, because again, ballots obviously need to be under lock and key. Those can't be left open. And then we submit them all to the polling location, and they get submitted and put through the tabulators, the machines, on election day. So nothing gets done ahead of time. So again, that requires more staffing the day of election. It goes into a little bit, I'm not going to bore you with what the processes are, and it might not pertain too much to this.
I have a quick question on that. So
yes,
for absentee voting as well as early voting, both those you can't count the ballots ahead of time. They have to be counted at the day.
Yes. So we've always felt that we can do, so absentees, they're not overbearing. The wardens process those. The process is the same. When you fill out an absentee ballot, you're authorizing that the election worker stands in your place. You are checked in, you are checked out. We open, we slice, we confirm. We don't ever look at your ballot, and we process that ballot. But yeah, those are never processed ahead of time. With the
that makes
votes,
a lot of sense then, because that's why we when you, not necessarily us, but you look at some other states where they have these, takes so days and days and days to get the results, because they have to do it all in that day. But yeah.
So we expect with vote by mail becoming more popular, people getting used to it, and as time goes on, people are going to utilize that, especially because there is it's going to be mandatory for state elections. There are different options in which to let's say pre-sort those ballots. Larger communities and cities who have 30,000 voters, they have different procedures that work for them. But we're still at a small enough scale that we can do it the day of.
It's not
we can do as much prep work as we can beforehand, but we can still do it. There's just different ways that we can do it. You'll notice at the last election in November, I tried something different called a central tabulation facility, where it's out in the open. It's like a precinct within a precinct, where I had 3 teams of 2 people out in the corner, so we weren't holding up the lines at the ballot box or at check-in. Because don't forget, we're just not feeding them through the machine. There's a whole process involved, and you have to check them in, check them out, and making sure that every vote is counted. So with that being said, obviously there's a cost. State currently, they're doing surveys. It's not guaranteed that they're going to be reimbursing us. You've heard the terminology unfunded mandate. This is exactly what it is. They're working with the state auditor's office currently on surveys and seeing how much those 2 mandated elections have cost the town, and to see if we'll be applicable for any type of reimbursement. Again, the local town election, there's a provision in the law which makes it gives the town the ability to opt out. So I'm here tonight to go over the costs. After our Board of Registrars meeting, we kind of went over all of the costs, and we did a breakdown, and they have made the recommendation to the Board of Selectmen for final approval that we opt out of vote by mail. let me give you some costs. So we have the standard general expenses for every election. What we're gonna need for ballots the day of, for staffing the day of, the coding of the machines. You know, all of those machines have the electronic chips in it, which tallies your votes. So a normal annual town election, general overhead costs are gonna run about $12,061. Now, cost for vote by mail. So vote by mail has different ballots. They're separate from the actual election day ballots. If you've ever been down to my office around election time, you'd be lucky if you can find us, because we're usually hidden behind boxes of ballots, because we get inundated in shipments. We never know when they're coming. So that's always a good time. But the state requires that voters have each eligible voter has the opportunity to vote 3 times in case they make an error. So you have up to 3 times to fill out your ballot. If you make a mistake, you can ask for a separate one. So with 6,000 voters, 6,800 voters times 3, you're looking at, 21 to 22,000 ballots.
Wow.
And now that's separate from the election day ballots. Because again, now you need to have the 21,000 ballots for, if every voter showed up and every voter made a mistake, that's the last thing you want to be caught with, is not having enough ballots on election day. One of the many things.
Yeah.
So that's where a lot of the cost is incurred. A lot of the cost is incurred as well for vote by mail. So we're looking based on last year's estimates, and don't forget, paper has gone up and postage has gone up. We normally don't order, I will tell you, based on our numbers and our history, we're very reluctant to order that many ballots. I'm supposed to order that many ballots, but based on previous history, just to try to save the town some funds and some money.
And the trees.
Yeah, and the trees, because it's very costly.
Yeah.
So,
It's mind blowing too.
yeah. And then the option to, everyone was used to last year, which they thought came from my office or our office, was the applications, those little postcards that you got from the state. So how do you notify all your residents and all your voters? Hey, this is going to be an option. You can request to vote by mail. Do you send a postcard? We don't have to. We can do PSAs, but it's going to be more difficult going forward when they're used to. The voters don't know when it's a state election year, like it's going to be in 2024 versus 2023, where we currently have the annual town election. So why do I get a postcard some years and not every year? Why is the town clerk, why is the election official not sending me a postcard this year? So when you start making all of these changes, yes, it's going to add to the confusion. So I've included that cost there. So the applications would be about $2,537. You're looking at those the postage for those postcards, that comes in at a little over $5,000. We worked a lot of overtime. We were there on several weekend nights until 1 o'clock in the morning, getting all these ballots out. So that incurred a little bit of overtime figure there. And then you have the processing for the vote by mail. We were getting inundated with all of those applications and ballots coming through, so I called in some election workers. That came in a little over $1,000. And then some more postage, and then the additional staff to that precinct, within a precinct that I spoke about, to process those ballots so we don't hold up the actual lines. That came in at a little over $550. So just for vote by mail, if you were to actually do everything you're supposed to be doing, you're looking at an additional $21,000 on top of your general election day costs. So those are huge burdens for the town. The Board of Registrars, we had an hour-long meeting, and we were throwing ideas back and forth, and we want to give folks the opportunity to cast a ballot, but also we don't want to empty the piggy bank.
Yeah.
And so the state Votes Act gave us that opportunity where the Board of Selectmen could opt out. So it's not that it was an easy decision. We went over the numbers, tried to decrease it a little bit, but it is still going to be an added cost to the town. And I don't know, things are very expensive at the moment. Taxes are, I was at the grocery store last night. I couldn't believe I was spending $4.99 on a head of lettuce.
Probably eggs are very expensive too.
I got chickens. So, so the total election day cost, Tim just put up the visual behind me here. So the general costs for election day is $12,000, vote by mail is an additional $21,000. So we're here to have the discussion and hopefully make the vote. If I can make anything a little bit more clearer for you folks. We want to give the voters the opportunity to vote. Absentee voting is available. It always has been. That's not going away. That's in the state constitution. So if for some reason someone cannot make it to the polls on election day, they still have the opportunity to absentee vote, whether that be a written request by mail with an application or a written request, or a in person. They can come down to the office once the ballots are available. Those ballots tend to be available 3 to 3.5 weeks prior to any election, where they can do it right over the counter there and get set up in the hallway. We've got some numbers behind you as well. The voter turnout and the breakdown for the fall 2022 elections, the state primary versus the state election in November. So the ballots that we sent out in September across all 3 precincts were 845. The number of vote by mail ballots that we actually got back were 602. We had some in-person early voting where we were hired additional staff, or we had the in-person voting here at the police station for that 1 week. That only turned out 106 in-person early voters. And then on election day, 733. Keep in mind for state elections versus state primaries, your in-person early voting, which is separate than this conversation, but just so you know, that's a 2-week time frame versus the regular primary, which is a week. A lot of stuff. I know I'm throwing a lot of information, and all you hear is vote. So please, if I can clarify anything for you, please stop me. But yeah, so going on to the November election, our voter turnout for the ballot sent, again, the number increased. More people were getting aware of what it is. Increased to 1454. We had ballots received by mail. Out of that 1454, 1190 were returned. And then the in-person generated 387. So we had that longer time frame of 2 weeks in person early voting. And that in all, in-person turnout on the day of the actual election was 2,268 voters.
Yeah, so I have a couple of kind of views in this. One, obviously the cost, and that's clear, right? The other part of it I see is like, your office does a lot. It's a lot going on, and if I can, minimize some of the undue, kind of work for you guys that not undue, but the like
increased workflow.
Yeah, just if I can just make your life a little bit easier, the office, I think that makes sense, just for everything to flow smoothly. There's a lot of moving parts here. And then finally, like, I see, there were some substantial voters by mail, if you look at it as a percentage, but I think that's because it was easier to do that than the absentee voting, because that's like one extra step, right, that they didn't have to do. It's because they're kind of the same. They're kind of the same. So in person, a lot of people didn't realize what it was. Yeah. Until the primary went through. And then for the general, they're like, oh, this is nice and convenient. And they feel more comfortable and almost feel, a lot of the comments that we get back is, at least I know I'm doing it in person, I'm not trusting the mail service. Yeah. So, but for local elections, I presented the numbers earlier, even though we're trying to increase voter turnout, the numbers for a local election are there as it would be for a state or a federal election, which you would think would kind of be opposite, because people can advocate change right in their own neighborhoods, right in their own towns. I say this all the time. They could, vote. I would like to see those local numbers increase. Yeah. And if we have unlimited staff and time, I think that, this would be a great option to add. But I think just from my perspective, it's like, given, the limited resources we have, I don't know if it's really the juice is worth the squeeze, right? Like, that's my opinion. I don't know. Thoughts on it?
I'm 100% in agreement. The only The one downfall you alluded to is obviously the idea of throwing people off with having one that they don't do it and then every other one they can. But I don't think that that's worth not doing this for, just for the stress of your office. I say stress, the strain on your office. I mean, and thinking of ahead to next year where you're saying you have 4 elections, like that's crazy. So there's gonna be, and you have a normal job to do, right? It's not just voting, so. And let's face it, your board and yourself are all in agreement with that this is what should happen. You're in the know, right? So I think that is something we should all do.
One thing I did forget to mention was, in regards to the local elections and opting out, this isn't a one and done deal.
This would be, so this would be every election.
Every
we'll have to make this
annual
decision.
local election, every special election, if a question would come up.
Yep.
A vacancy on the Board of Selectmen for some reason
Yep.
would trigger a special election, we'd have to, the Board of Registrars would have to make a recommendation and then present to the Board of Selectmen for final decision, approval, and final vote.
Yep.
So it's, by any decisions being made tonight, it's not gonna.
It's not binding.
It's not binding.
And if we get a ton of pushback, and we'll hear those folks out. I'm sure more folks would have probably showed up to, if they're very upset about it, but or strongly opinion one way or the other. So,
But I
yeah,
do want to stress that absentee voting is still available.
It's still, yeah.
And it's not going away, and it works, the process is the same.
yeah. And we're not going to be checking if someone's actually on vacation or not.
Correct. If you're telling me that you are not going to be in the town of Freetown and cannot make it to the polls during those hours,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good point.
for cause.
For cause. All right. Anybody else have anything on this?
Anything I can clarify, any additional questions?
I think you did a great job.
Yeah.
Thank you. I had
So,
wonderful
thank you.
help from, Board of Registrars, and of course, my new assistant, Tim, he's great. Helped me put all this together and getting the information out there, because that's our goal. That is our goal. I think local town residents need to, we're the hub of town government, right? The town clerk's office and the elections office. We're the connection between local town government and the folks in town. And I think we all need to do a better job at trying to get the information out there, but get it in different ways. You have those folks who are digitally savvy. You have those folks who, probably are elderly, who only watch the news or local channel to get their local information, or they're out in the coffee shops. So the more avenues that I can take to get the word out there, to increase questions, to increase awareness, to increase involvement, that is one of my personal goals. So anything I can do, and I thank the board for allowing me to come on. You'll be seeing me a lot more. Folks at home are gonna get sick and tired of hearing my accent and my voice, but
Never.
that is what we're trying to do. So tonight we're here just to, I'm here to ask for a vote
All right.
from the Board of Selectmen.
All right. Great. All right. So that I'm going to close the meeting and then we'll have a vote. Anyone else? No comment from the public? Good. All right. So I'll entertain a motion. Sir, good. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion made.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Now we have agenda item 11. So this is for whether pursuant to Mass General Law Chapter 40. Actually, I'll just do the motion. Sorry. I'll entertain a motion to pursuant to Mass General Law Chapter 4025BA1, the Votes Act, to opt out of the vote by mail for the annual town election scheduled for Monday, April 3rd, 2023.
I'll make a motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. We're good to go.
Thank you very much.
Cheryl,
Thank you.
it has to be a roll call.
Oh, roll call, that's right.
I think it has to be a
Roll call vote.
Roll call vote.
Selectman Zager?
Yes.
Selectman Matthews?
Yes. Good catch.
That's it, it's all
Good
right.
catch.
Yeah.
No,
Selectmen days, can we come back?
I appreciate that. All right, awesome. So I think we just have to do signatures,
Just one.
right? I didn't miss any agenda items?
You're good.
Didn't get the year wrong, I don't think. Pretty impressive.
Come February, not gonna be that easy on you, just saying.
All right. We have one signature today?
Literally.
Wow.
That's
I've never had it.
Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
motion made.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.